Welcome to Act Notes Tutorials. My name is Bert, and I am going to give you a quick tutorial on sole source justification and approval. What is a sole source? A sole source procurement, also called an other than full and open competition, is when the government enters into a contract with a contractor without going through the typical competitive process as required by law. The government has deemed that the contractor is the only source available that can meet the government requirements. The definition of a sole source is the authorization, under certain conditions, contracting without providing for full and open competition. A justification and approval, what we call a J&A, is a document required by the Federal Acquisition Regulation Subpart 6.3 that justifies and obtains approval for a sole source contract. The definition of a justification and approval is a document required to justify and obtain appropriate level approvals to contract without providing for full and open competition as required by the Federal Acquisition Regulations. The following statutory situations allow contracting without providing for full and open competition. Only one responsible source. Unusual and compelling urgency. Industrial mobilization. International agreement. Authorized or required by statute. National security. And finally, public interest. What are the requirements a contracting officer must ensure in order to issue a sole source? A contracting officer cannot commence negotiations for a sole source contract without providing for full and open competition until the contracting officer does the following: justifies the use of such actions in writing, certifies the accuracy and completeness of the justification, obtains the approval. Technical and requirements personnel have certified their recommendation for other than full and open competition. And finally, justifications may be made on an individual or class basis. Whenever a justification is made and approved on a class basis, the contracting officer must ensure that each contract is within the scope of the justification and approval. What content is required in a justification and approval? Each justification and approval should contain sufficient facts and rationale to justify the use of a sole source. As a minimum, each justification should address the following 12 topics. These topics include identification of the agency and the contracting activity, and specific identification of the document as a justification for other than full and open competition. Nature and description of the action being approved. A description of the supplies or services required to meet the agency's needs. An identification of the statutory authority permitting other than full and open competition. A demonstration that the proposed contractor's unique qualifications or the nature of the acquisition require the use of the authority cited. A description of efforts made to ensure that offers are solicited from as many potential sources as is practicable. A determination by the contracting officer that the anticipated cost to the government will be fair and reasonable. A description of the market research conducted and the results or a statement of the reason market research was not conducted. Any other facts supporting the use of other than full and open competition. A listing of the sources, if any, that expressed, in writing, an interest in the acquisition. A statement of the actions, if any, the agency may take to remove or overcome any barriers to competition before any subsequent acquisition for the supplies or services required. And finally, the contracting officer certification that the justification is accurate and complete to the best of the contracting officer's knowledge and belief. Thank you for watching this tutorial on the sole source justification and approval. Visit the website for more information to include guides, instructions, a template, and required content. Congratulations for finishing this tutorial and thanks for visiting Act Notes.